Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I had just finished a grueling shift at the hospital. As a nurse, I'm used to long hours and demanding work, but this day had been particularly tough. We'd been short-staffed, and I barely had time to catch my breath, let alone eat anything. By the time I clocked out, I was absolutely famished. On my way home, I decided to stop at McDonald's. It wasn't the healthiest choice, but at that point, I just needed something quick and filling. The line wasn't too long when I got there, maybe 5 or 6 people ahead of me. I patiently waited my turn, daydreaming about sinking my teeth into a Big Mac. Finally, I reached the counter. Just as the young cashier was about to take my order, this older woman came out of nowhere and planted herself right next to me. She slapped some money on the counter, acting like she owned the place. I turned to her and politely explained that I was next in line, indicating where the end of the queue was. I even pointed to show her where to go. It was like I'd just insulted her entire family tree. She snapped back, declaring that it didn't matter if I was next because she was going ahead of me anyway. Who did this woman think she was? I'd been on my feet for 12 hours straight, dealing with entitled patients all day, and now this? Oh, hell no, I thought. This is not happening. The poor cashier came back looking confused. She looked between us and hesitantly asked me what I wanted to order. Before I could open my mouth, this woman, let's call her Karen, stepped even closer and started talking over me. She was practically shoving her money in the cashier's face, insisting that she only wanted a shake and shouldn't have to wait in line for just that. The cashier looked absolutely bewildered. I felt bad for her. She was young, probably new to the job, and clearly had no idea how to handle the situation. So I decided to step in. I explained to the cashier that I had been waiting patiently in line like everyone else, and that this woman had just walked up trying to cut in front of everyone. I said I was next and wanted to place my order. I started to tell the cashier what I wanted, but Karen wasn't giving up. She kept pushing her money towards the cashier, talking over me the whole time. That's when I'd had enough. Without even thinking, I reached out, grabbed Karen's money, and tossed it on the floor on the other side of me. The coins made a satisfying clinking sound as they scattered across the tiles. Karen spluttered for a moment, then had to walk around me to pick up her money. As she bent down, I caught the eyes of the people behind me in line. They'd clearly been watching the whole scene unfold, and every single one of them was grinning from ear to ear. I then calmly placed my order for a Big Mac meal, large size. The cashier, looking relieved, quickly took my order. As she handed me my receipt, I heard Karen complaining about the ridiculous service and vowing never to return. I turned around, unable to resist getting in one last word. I pointed out that if she had just asked nicely, I probably would have let her go ahead, emphasizing that a little kindness goes a long way, especially when asking for a favor. Karen huffed and puffed, but she didn't say another word. She stomped to the back of the line, glaring daggers at me the whole time. The guy behind me in line gave me a thumbs up as I moved to the side to wait for my order. Sure, maybe throwing her money wasn't the most mature thing to do, but after the day I'd had, it felt good to stand up to someone like that. And judging by the smiles on everyone else's faces, I wasn't the only one who thought Karen needed to be taken down a peg. When my order was ready, I grabbed my tray and headed for a table. As I passed Karen, still waiting at the back of the line, I couldn't resist one final parting shot. I sarcastically wished her enjoyment of her shake, suggesting I hoped it was worth the wait. Maybe Karen learned a lesson about patience and respect that day, but somehow I doubted it. I'm a college student, and I've been staying with my grandparents for the summer. They live in this cozy little house on the outskirts of town surrounded by fields and forests. It's peaceful, and I love spending time with them. My grandparents are in their 70s, but they're still pretty spry. Grandpa's a retired mechanic, and Grandma used to be a school teacher. They've been married for over 50 years, and they're the kind of couple that still holds hands when they walk together. One day, I was helping Grandpa in his workshop. He was teaching me how to fix an old radio when we heard a loud crash from inside the house. We looked at each other, confused. Grandpa wondered aloud what the noise could have been, and I suggested we should go check it out. We hurried back to the house, and as we got closer, we could hear someone rummaging around inside. Grandpa signaled me to be quiet. We crept up to the back door and peeked through the window. There, in the living room, was a woman I'd never seen before. She was tearing through drawers and cabinets, tossing things left and right. My heart started racing when I saw her pick up my grandma's prized jewelry box. I whispered to Grandpa that the woman was stealing Grandma's jewelry. He whispered back, asking where Grandma was. Just then we heard the familiar creak of the attic stairs. Grandma was coming down and she had no idea there was an intruder in the house. I was about to call out to warn her when something unexpected happened. Grandma appeared at the bottom of the stairs, holding Grandpa's old shotgun. Her eyes widened when she saw the stranger, but then her expression changed. I'd never seen my grandma look so fierce. She ordered the woman to drop the box immediately, threatening her with consequences if she didn't comply. The woman spun around, clutching the jewelry box to her chest. She had this entitled look on her face, like she couldn't believe someone was interrupting her robbery. She indignantly asked Grandma if she knew who she was, as if that mattered. Grandma retorted that she didn't care who the woman was. She said the woman was in her house, stealing her things, and demanded that she put the box down and leave before she lost her patience. The woman, who I'll call Karen because she sure acted like one, had the audacity to look offended. She actually stomped her foot like a toddler throwing a tantrum. Karen complained that it wasn't fair, claiming she deserved nice things too and suggesting that old people didn't need all this stuff anyway. This woman had broken into my grandparents' house and was trying to justify stealing from them. Grandma, however, wasn't having any of it. She began counting to 3, warning Karen that if the box wasn't on the floor by then, she'd be leaving with a backside full of buckshot. Karen tried to call Grandma's bluff, saying she wouldn't dare. As Grandma counted, Karen became increasingly agitated, threatening to call the police herself. By the time Grandma reached 2, Karen started to look a little less sure of herself. She looked at the door, then back at Grandma and the shotgun. Before Grandma could finish saying 3, Karen let out a shriek and dropped the jewelry box. It hit the floor with a clatter and a few necklaces spilled out. Karen made a dash for the door, but Grandpa and I were ready. We burst in, blocking her escape. I asked Karen sarcastically if she was going somewhere. Karen demanded we get out of her way, calling Grandma an old bat who had threatened her. Grandpa defended his wife, telling Karen she was lucky Grandma hadn't shot her on the spot. We managed to corral Karen into a corner while I called the police. The whole time she kept ranting about how unfair it all was and how we were discriminating against her. It was surreal. When the police arrived, Karen tried to spin some story about how we had invited her in and then threatened her for no reason. But with the broken window in the back and the mess she'd made of the house, it was pretty clear what had really happened. As the police were leading Karen away, she turned to glare at us one last time, declaring that this wasn't over and threatening to sue us all. Grandma, who had set aside the shotgun once the police arrived, just smiled sweetly and sarcastically suggested that next time Karen wanted to visit, she should try knocking first. After all the excitement died down and we'd given our statements to the police, we sat down for a cup of tea. I expressed my amazement at how Grandma had stood up to Karen, asking where she had learned to handle a shotgun. Grandma chuckled and explained that Grandpa wasn't the only one with hidden talents. She revealed that she had grown up on a farm and had to protect the chickens from foxes. We all had a good laugh about it, and you can bet I'll think twice before underestimating any little old ladies in the future. I was just a regular kid from the suburbs. Always had a passion for music. My parents wanted me to pursue a real career, so I compromised and went to a prestigious university for business. But after a year of mind-numbing lectures and soul-crushing assignments, I knew I had to make a change. I decided to follow my heart and switch to a local music technical college. It wasn't an easy decision. My parents weren't thrilled, but they reluctantly agreed to let me move back home while I attended classes. Money was tight, so I had to get creative with my commute. That's how I ended up buying a parking permit for a church lot about 10 blocks from school. It was cheaper than campus parking, and I figured the walk would do me good. Little did I know that this decision would lead to one of the most bizarre experiences of my life. On one chilly morning in 2003, I was walking to class enjoying a cigarette when this guy appeared out of nowhere. The homeless man approached me and asked if he could have a cigarette. I was young and cocky back then, so I decided to have a little fun. I told him he could have a smoke, but only if he walked with me to class and kept me company while he smoked it. To my surprise, he agreed. We started walking and he introduced himself. I'm not going to use his name, but let's just say he looked exactly like you'd expect a homeless guy to look. Scruffy beard, mismatched clothes, the works. We chatted about random stuff, and just before we reached my school, he hit me with another request. The homeless guy asked if I had any spare change. I replied that I didn't keep change on me. It wasn't a lie. I had this habit of tossing all my spare change into these big glass milk jugs in my room. Little did I know how that habit would come back to bite me. For the next 15 months, yeah, you heard that right, over a year, this guy showed up every single day. He'd memorized my schedule and would be waiting at the corner, ready to bum a smoke and chat on our way to school. And every day, without fail, he'd ask for change. As graduation approached, I was getting ready for class one morning when I spotted those milk jugs, overflowing with change. I looked at the huge pockets of my leather trench coat and had an idea. A ridiculous, probably ill-advised idea, but I couldn't resist. I emptied both jugs into my pockets. Let me tell you, 2 gallons of change is heavy. I waddled out the door, trying not to jingle with every step. Our usual routine started. We met at the corner, I gave him a smoke, and we walked. I was struggling to keep a straight face and walk normally. When we reached the end of our walk, he turned to me with his usual question about spare change. I told him I'd make him a deal. I explained that I would give him all the change in my pockets if he promised to never ask me for change again. I asked if we had a deal. He nodded, holding out one hand. I shook my head and told him he didn't understand, that I had a lot of change. He held out both hands, cupping them together. I shook my head again and repeated that he didn't understand, emphasizing that I had a lot of change. Seeing his confused look, I grabbed the bottom of his sweatshirt and pulled it up, making him hold it like a hammock. Then I started shoveling handfuls of change into it. His eyes got wider and wider as I kept going. Just when he thought I was done, I switched to the other pocket and kept going. The sound of all that change echoed between the buildings. We were both laughing uncontrollably. When I finally finished, he thanked me and waddled off like he was pregnant with twins made of quarters. The next day was bright and sunny. I parked at the church feeling pretty smug about how I'd handled things. As I walked, I saw him at the corner grinning from ear to ear. The homeless guy greeted me enthusiastically and asked if he could get a smoke. There was a long pause as I processed what had just happened. All that change. And he was still here, still asking for stuff. I told him that, yes, he could have a smoke. Some things just never change, even when you give away gallons of it. But you know what? I wouldn't have had it any other way. My grandpa would always tell me stories about his time fighting in World War II. He'd often remind me that they fought for freedom, and that I should never let anyone take that away from me. Those words stuck with me. So when my wife and I decided it was time to buy a house, I had one rule: no homeowners associations. I'd heard horror stories about power-tripping neighbors and ridiculous rules. No way was I going to deal with that nonsense. We got in touch with a family friend who worked as a real estate agent. From the start, I made it clear to her that I had one condition: no HOAs, period. She assured me she'd keep that in mind during our search. We toured a bunch of houses over the next few weeks. Some were nice, others not so much. But then we came across this place that seemed perfect. It had everything: a 2-car garage, a finished basement that was screaming to be turned into my man cave, and a layout my wife absolutely loved. As we walked through the house, I could see the excitement in my wife's eyes. She exclaimed how perfect it was and asked if I could picture us living there. I agreed that it did look pretty great. We were standing in the kitchen, discussing potential bids with our agent, when I noticed something near the front door: brochures. I walked over, picked one up, and felt my heart sink. It was for the neighborhood's homeowners association. I called out to the others, questioning about the HOA. Our agent's face fell, and she looked genuinely upset. She apologized profusely, explaining that she had completely missed that detail, and this house wasn't supposed to be on our list. I showed the brochure to my wife, shaking my head and apologizing, reminding her of our rule. My wife looked disappointed, but she understood. That's when our agent asked why I was so against HOAs. I didn't hesitate. My answer came out quick and sharp. I told her that my grandfather didn't fight the Nazis in World War II just for his grandkids to live under them. Suddenly, I heard a loud gasp from across the room. An older woman I hadn't noticed before was staring at me. I met her glare head-on and asked if something was wrong. The woman, who I later found out was on the HOA board, marched over to us. She was outraged that I would compare their community to those monsters. I retorted that if the shoe fits, they should wear it. I pointed out how they tried to control everything from house colors to plant choices and even grass length, which I found controlling. She argued that they maintain property values and community standards. I countered that they were just maintaining their own egos and power trips. By this point, my wife was tugging on my arm, trying to get me to leave. But I wasn't done. I told the woman that my grandpa would look at their rules and regulations and see exactly what he fought against: people trying to control others and strip away their freedoms. The woman tried to protest further, but I cut her off. I announced we were leaving and that I'd be sure to tell everyone I knew about how lovely their community was. As we walked out, I could hear the woman sputtering behind us. We did end up finding the perfect house a few weeks later. No HOA, plenty of space, and neighbors who mind their own business. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.